with this cast, when I arrived at the set every morning, I was being tossed the keys to a Formula One race car. And that as long as I didn't put the car in the wall, these guys were going to win the race. In terms of casting, Sasha had been cast way back in 2007 when Stephen was supposed to direct the film. And Sasha made it very clear to me that even though 13 years had gone by, I should not even attempt to cast anyone else as Abby. This is his part, and he intends on playing it. That's done as a practical necessity, something that's done because you have to. For instance, the best example is the shark in Jaws, which very famously never worked. On every day the shark was supposed to be, you were supposed to be shooting the shark never worked. And so Stephen had to shoot around the shark. And as a result, the shark doesn't appear in the movie. You don't see the shark until the end of the second act, which turned out to be exactly the moment you would do it. Once it makes you start thinking creatively, and you end up coming up with what you'd do if circumstances had been perfect. And the same thing happened here. One of the things that kept delaying this movie was the riots, that there were two big battle scenes in this movie. And those scenes were budget busters. You have to have a budget for a film like this that's in proportion to what the studio's expectation is of the audience appetite. And those riots kept busting the budget. So it fell to me to find a way to do it. Once Stephen said, guess what, you're directing Chicago 7, I had to figure out the riots.
Our streets! Our streets! Our streets!
And up their game. There was a certain tension that came from the fact that Aaron had cast this film with this sort of troupe of heavyweight actors, but what was wonderful is we got to learn. I certainly would sit there watching, Frank Langella go at it with Mark Rylance or Michael Keaton, and it felt like watching, Federer and Nadal. But what was also sort of clever is Aaron cast a group of actors, all of whom pretty much had different processes. So it felt like an orchestra in some ways. It felt like you had different instruments coming in, and at moments they would clash, and at moments there was just complete sort of harmony. I don't mean that in a personality way. I just mean that in a sort of technical way in some ways. But I think we all it energized the making of the film hugely.
Constitutional right to amend their government. They shall exert their revolutionary right to dismember and overthrow that government.
When I play a real person, as I did with Frost Nixon, I read everything I can find about the person. I don't do it with fictional characters at all, but I read whatever I can find, and then I let it all go and go on with my imagination. But the piece of that character that's real stays inside me. And there weren't a great deal of books about him. Every one of them said the same thing. He was corrupt beyond all measure, and he knew he would convict them all. And so, but I never played that. I just played what I believed. I'm right. You're all wrong. I'm right.
Go back to your table, because I am then going to be able to get coverage here for you when Bobby is talking.
Well, I've said this, but it bears repeating. It felt like working on the 1984 Olympic Dream Team, and like everyone is Michael Jordan. It was thrilling, but mainly what that created was an environment that felt like the seriousness of the film, the level of commitment and care. Everyone was there to be stewards to tell this story, which is a story that is bigger than all of us, and that is arguably the most important story of our time. Sure, I mean, a lot goes into preparing for any role, and the role itself kind of dictates what that might be. There's for me, a sort of voracious amount of reading and research, books that Jerry wrote, books about the period, footage of Jerry, music of the period, learning as much as you can, internalizing it, kind of putting that all in the chrysalis, and then letting whatever emerge. You kind of have to make it your own. You're not doing an impersonation, but I think you really do need to, by some kind of osmosis, take on the character. And as far as working with Sasha, it was a joy. I mean, Sasha, there are a lot of parallels between Sasha and Abby Hoffman. Sasha is a clown who's also like the most serious guy in the room. And that's who Abby and Jerry were. You know, they were these merry pranksters, and they used humor and guerrilla theater tactics as a way of expressing their outrage and their dissent. And so Sasha and I got to sort of live that out while we filmed this movie.
Take off the ropes, please.
Well, every actor works differently. That's the lovely thing, you know. Even if you go to the same school, you come out with different techniques, different things that convince you that you are believable, different experiences. So it was a lot of fun. It's the nicest part of the job, really, is that you get to meet many different people who are painting or playing their music, so to speak, in different ways, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot, yeah, and it's always it's a very encouraging thing, just in human activity, to see the ability of actors to work together, even though they may be working in very different ways, but to very quickly develop ways of trusting each other and working together. We certainly need more of that.
With these guys, I never even seen most of them until the indictment.
We will have order.
There are 8 of us here, and there are signs out there that read the Chicago 7. There are 8 of us here, and there are signs out there that say free the Chicago 7. I'm not with them. The U.S. attorney wanted a Negro defendant to scare the jury. I was thrown in to make the group look scary.
You know, Aaron really wanted to, you know, to tell this story with a lot of responsibility. He wanted to tell this story and really have it land in this moment in time. And to inspire people. You know, it's a call to action film to get out, to get amongst, you know, the people, you know, to use our voices towards change. And so, you know, that was Aaron's mission, and it was really, really great to work under his leadership and to bring his words to life. So for Bobby Seale, I knew that this was a real historical figure. I wanted to make sure that I treated this with as much importance as possible, with as much care as possible. And I learned a lot about Bobby. I read his autobiography, A Lonely Rage. I watched interviews on YouTube. I watched interviews particularly that took place when he was in prison during this time. And I just really tried to learn the essence of his character and to learn what was he preoccupied with throughout the course of the trial, and in his life as well. I found that to be living the life that he deserves as a human, with decency, with integrity, and defending his constitutional right that was afforded to him as a citizen of the United States. And so that gave me a lot to fight for and a lot to defend.